All right, so I have had the opportunity to play the first 5 hours of Pokopia. I streamed it all last night until very early in the morning, and my opinion is that this is a fantastic evolution of the life sim genre. It has interesting mechanics. It's Pokemon themed. It feels radically different than anything else in the genre, and I think it kind of excels when it comes to building, when it comes to the comfiness, when it comes to like the general structure, when it comes to the vibes, when it comes to the mechanics. Like, this is a very interesting new installment in the genre. And right now, the industry's desperate to try and spin this as a bad thing. I saw OmniArc TV release a statement trying to say that, like, oh yeah, this is the most critically acclaimed Pokemon in gaming years because Game Freak outsourced it. No, this was a game that is reaching critical acclaim and mainstream success because it's high quality. Trying to like write this off and like trying to like, make this about like mainline Pokemon and Game Freak is just completely missing the point in my mind. This game is doing very, 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 very well because it's so high quality. And people should be celebrating that. People should be acknowledging it. People should be like, celebrating how good this game is. But instead, what we're getting is a bunch of weird conspiracies and a bunch of weird copes. Okay? Like, I have seen so many people over the past several months try and write this off as like a minor release. As early as like, as recently as like last week, a lot of major YouTubers were trying to say that there were no major upcoming games for Switch 2 on the horizon when this was right there. There were so many people trying to say that, like, I'm not interested in this game, I hate Pokemon, I hate life sims, and it just feels like super disingenuous and forced. I released several statements about this, about how this was going to be this huge thing, about how Pokopia was going to be this, like, huge cultural phenomenon, and nobody believed me, and today we all woke up to see the White House making Pokopia memes and people just celebrating, the story and the lore and just the characters in this. Like, Pokopia is a fantastic experience. And yet, like, we're seeing the entire gaming community try and rally and try and, like, complain about this. I've seen people try and say that this game doesn't have much of a story. It does. I've seen people complain about the pacing. The pacing is perfectly fine. I've seen people complain about the length. I've seen people complain about the content. I've seen people complain about Pokemon. And all of it just falls completely flat, honestly. Like, it does feel as if this is going to be the beginning of the Switch 2 storm. Where we got this, and next week we'll be getting, like, Fatal Frame 2, and like, a couple of weeks after that, we're getting, like, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Like, there are so many, like, major upcoming games for this console that we can no longer say that there's, like, nothing to play on this console. If you say that now, you're going to get laughed at. Like, I would argue that, like, that's been true since day one, but what we're seeing now is just more and more people acknowledging that Pokopia is this major system seller. Like, no matter how many times you see people bitching about, like, my game key card, like, the simple fact of the matter is, Pokopia is dominating. It is this major, major success, and I think will go on to be one of the most fondly remembered games on the console. And it's very interesting to see this happen because we were assured by the community that this would not happen, that this game was a disappointment, that there was nothing to expect from this, that this is something that would, like, underperform, and that Pokemon was just on the way out. We've been told that for years. And what we're seeing now is that we're seeing the beginning of the end of the Dexit conspiracy. For the past decade, we've been told that the Pokemon Company is lazy, that Game Freak can't make games for consoles, that they're an incompetent studio, that they don't know what they're doing, and in actuality, they were putting out banger after banger after banger. And now, with Pokopia, we're seeing them expand into spin-off territory. We're seeing Gen 10, and it looks great, and the industry is just not prepared for what this means. The industry is scared of what a Pokemon game that's accepted by the mainstream gaming public is going to look like. Because as long as as I can remember, whenever Pokemon comes up in gaming circles, people just kind of sneer at it. and say it's a worthless brand and that there's way better games on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. And the simple reality is that that's not true. Pokopia is just bigger and better than Stardew Valley already. And I think people are really going to struggle with this realization. You know, people are going to keep screaming about, like, but it made $1 billion, though. Completely neglecting to mention the fact that that Pokopia will have, like, you know, actual sequels. It'll have follow-up. They'll do more things with it. You know, you have, like, you know, the events. You have, like, so many things that'll keep you playing for Pokopia for a long time. Like, again, it is going to be very, very difficult to downplay Pokemon Pokopia when other Nintendo games are coming out and when the game is as popular and beloved as it is. Like, and I do think that's going to be the big problem when it comes to downplaying Nintendo Switch 2 at this point. Like, if you try and downplay something like Tamagotchi Life, you're going to have to downplay, like, Pragmata launching the same day on the console, right? Like, you can't downplay everything that comes out on the console at the same time. You know, if you insist that, like, oh, I don't want to play Tamagotchi, I don't want to play Pokopia, like, I want a real game, I want a man's game, I want something mature and for adults, like, well, just buy the games that are coming out, you know? It's just... again, what we're seeing is just a gigantic cope from the community in regards to these situations. Like, what we're seeing is people slowly starting waking up to the fact that Nintendo is killing it, that there's no downplaying anymore, that there's no, like, that there's no ability to just write off and ignore Nintendo right now. Like, what we're seeing is a complete and utter downfall of the narrative in regards to Pokemon, the Switch 2, and Pokopia in particular. And that is going to extend to other Nintendo Switch properties. You know, this is going to extend to other games that are coming out in the near future. Like, this is the beginning of the end of the Pokemon hate grift, and I believe, like, the very beginning of the end of the Nintendo Switch 2 grift. Like, this is something that I think people are going to be struggling with for a very, 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 very long time, is that they can't complain about everything that Nintendo does when games like this come out and are this popular and this successful. Okay, you cannot bum rush your way through this game. You cannot just rush to the ending. It's not that kind of experience. And that is something that I think is going to be a huge thing when it gets people to stop complaining about Nintendo Switch 2 and all of its games.